Well, there's so much you know about my guest today, so much that's been written about his efforts to try and transform Microsoft, but perhaps here's a thing or two that you don't know about him. Delhi is close to his heart because he proposed to his wife here in Lodi Gardens in 1992. He flunked the IIT examination and went to Manipal. He's probably one of the very few who gave up a green card for an H-1B visa so his wife could have the ability to work in the US along with him. Satya Nadella, thanks very much for joining us. And one last fun fact, Hyderabad Public School, where you had classmates Ajay Banga, who now heads MasterCard, and Shantanu Narayan of Adobe. Give me a fun fact that we don't know about you so far.
I mean, I would say, growing up, I would have dreamt of actually, working in a bank and playing cricket for Hyderabad. And here I am as CEO of Microsoft, and it's the most unlikely place.
Let me talk about the leadership lessons that you've written about in your book, and I think I've tried to map some of them. You say that the C in the CEO stands for culture. How do you ensure that culture is not just linked to who's in the corner office? And you write about this in the book, that I want to ensure that it doesn't become a Satya thing.
Right.
So what does it mean to you now to bring in consistency into the way that the organization acts and thinks?
No, to me, that's really, I think, at the core, which is, especially when an organization becomes successful, that means the idea or the concept that you had has now become a hit. You build all this capability as well as the culture to, in some sense, reinforce the concept. You get even this virtuous cycle between the idea, the capability, and culture. But the reality is, at some point, whatever was that novel, interesting new idea runs out of gas. You need a new idea. That's when culture will matter. That culture that allows you to continuously question the status quo. So I went on this quest for saying, what is a meme that we can have, even to have a cultural conversation inside the company? And that's what led me to Carol Dweck's work around mindset, where the simple concept is, if you have a person in school who is a know-it-all, and the other one is a learn-it-all, the learn-it-all will ultimately do better.
But isn't that the CEO problem? Isn't that the big CEO affliction, knowing it all?
That's correct. And in fact, the idea that you as a CEO have to create a culture by first admitting your own fixed mindset. At least I believe that's the key. In order to have continuous or renewed success, you really have to question status quo, and it doesn't come from a source of knowing it all.
You talk about the need to redefine leadership, and I'll ask you that in the context of the fact that you've drawn from your own experiences as a husband and as a father. This empathetic style of leadership that you talk about, do you believe that you would have been able to do this if you didn't have those experiences to lean on? And how important is it? I mean, we've grown up with the idea of winner takes it all, the paranoid survive, etc. So when you now talk about empathetic leadership, Jack Ma talks about having the love quotient. How is it that CEOs are now seeming to embrace the feminine energy much more?
It's probably time. But more important,
I agree with you there, by the way.
But for me, for example, when I describe, or at least I internalize, Microsoft's core business, core priority is to meet unmet, unarticulated needs of customers. There's no way we're going to be able to do that, especially the unarticulated part, if we don't have a deeper sense of empathy for what is it that really customers expect from us. You're not going to be able to go to work and switch on the button called empathy, right? And say, let me now build innovative products that are well liked and we're going to in fact surprise customers in good ways. So to me, you have to be able to take your life, what life teaches you. In my case, that's clearly the case, which is who I am as both a product leader or as an organizational leader is something that has been shaped by my life's experience, whether it's the birth of my son or the last interview question of my Microsoft interview loop. All of these are moments where I feel I've learned to be able to see more of us in them and them in us. And that clearly, I believe, is what's needed for real innovation in any organization.
The customer's always been at the center of an organization's strategy. So an empathetic leadership style, how does that make the customer different?
In fact, this morning, I was even meeting with some of the folks who are in the front lines at Microsoft servicing customers. One of them said to me, it's so different. What the expectations when somebody has moved their most mission-critical application, if you're an automaker or an insurance company, to our cloud, it's no longer that they just bought a product from us. They are dependent on our technology for the core of their business. So their expectations of how we show up, how we understand their needs, and what we need to equip our people to be able to do so is so different. So to me, that, when you say customer centricity, of course, if you're not customer centric, you're not going to be able to do much. But it's the customer centricity as a continuous process, not as a discrete process. That means the learn it all. So it's not like, oh, I sold my customer something. What is it that my customer is going to want to do with what I sold them on a continuous basis? That's the only way to build loyalty. That's the only way to build business.
Which is why you decided to include customers as part of your senior leadership retreat, which I believe faced some resistance at the start.
You know, it's one of these things when you take the senior-most people and say, hey, let's listen to customers. You know, the natural reaction, quite frankly, even I would have had, of course I listen to customers. I mean, that's what I do every day. I don't need to go to a senior retreat to listen to customers. But the reality I wanted to, at least strike there was, let's have a shared experience of actually talking to customers together. It's not to say that anyone is sort of not doing their job, but it's to be able to live in that shared experience that makes us stronger. So there was some resistance, but also there was, I think, a lot of learning for all of us subsequently.
You know, one of the other issues that you talk about in the book is the purpose of differentiation, and you talk about it in the context of the AWS Azure strategy that you adopted today, $20 billion for your cloud services. How critical was that for you to say that, look, Microsoft is about data, Microsoft is about AI. How do we incorporate those capabilities into an area that we're clearly not the leaders?
I mean, to me, one of the things has informed a lot of the choices we've made, the markets we compete in, and how we compete in, how do we create differentiation, is to live up to our sense of purpose. I think technologies will change, but I think the core identity, like if I look back, right, Microsoft was created when Paul and Bill sort of created the basic interpreter for the Altair. Very recently, in fact, we were talking about and marking some big milestones in quantum computing. What did we do? We, in fact, launched a new language for quantum algorithms. We put a simulator in Azure so that developers can now start learning quantum. So I felt that even in the cloud, we can be the ones who can democratize AI infrastructure, so that developers can be successful.
So that, to your mind, is the soul of Microsoft, democratization of technology.
Correct, because in some sense, the soul of Microsoft is we create technology so that others can go on to create more technology or achieve more success because of what they have been able to do with our products. We're that ultimate platform and tool creator. Whether it's Minecraft or whether it's Word or Visual Basic or Visual Tools or Azure, to me, they're all things that allow others to create more technology.
You know, since you're talking about others, I also want to talk to you about competition. And you have an interesting perspective and take on that in the book. You say that Microsoft was all about the competitive zeal, aggression, combativeness, but that's not your leadership style. You know, I'm sure your leadership style is not accepting the market as is, but how do you encourage a spirit of competitiveness without combativeness or aggression?
You know, one of the things, the best pieces of advice I ever got from Steve and Bill was to be my own person, and how I lead. And the way at least I look at all competition is, first, let's talk about the things that we can do in a non-zero-sum way, or at least not view everything as zero-sum, especially in view of customers. One thing I grew up in is in our enterprise business or our commercial business, and realizing that it's not a homogeneous world, it's a heterogeneous world. In fact, it's to our advantage if we play well with others, propagate open standards, because then customers will adopt more of your technology. So I've always grown up in the Microsoft that knew how to both cooperate and compete. And I wanted to bring those both back. I mean, there are some battles that are zero-sum. You know, we compete against Amazon and AWS, but at the same time, we're happy to bring Cortana to Alexa. And that ability to keep those two separate thoughts and yet compete and cooperate, I think, is what's going to drive ultimately more success.
Well, let me add the third C to that. You talked about competition and let me ask you about collaboration, because one of the focus areas in the book is also about building partnerships and building partnerships that last, and not necessarily obvious choice for partners as well. What's going to drive the strategy when it comes to collaboration? How do you decide that this is not going to be an acquisition, but this is going to be a partnership in the context of the experience that that Microsoft had with Nokia, for instance?
I mean, to me, Microsoft again has historically been all about creating platforms. There's no way you can create ecosystems and platforms if you don't have that partnership gene at the core. When I look back, even look at what I'm doing even with Adobe now, with Shantanu and team. It's a big partnership for both, a big bet on his part to move to the Azure cloud, bring all of his Creative Cloud and his Experience Cloud and Document Cloud to Microsoft, and for Microsoft to be able to do the integrations and make his products successful on our platforms. I think that's what it takes. Building of long-term trust with partners is what I think is the real currency for anybody who's in the platform business.